Alright, so Orgnar is just an innkeeper. I guess I accidentally stole from an inn or something. That makes sense. It's really easy to do that. Yeah. Dwenmere Inquiries, Volume 1. Their Ancient Architecture and Civilization by Thwel Gwynlyn Scholar. It has been my life's work to investigate the Dwenmere and their dubious history and mysterious banishment. My goal with this text is to share my findings and conclusions based on 80 years spent studying their unique architectural remains. The migration of the Deep Elves from the ancestral Dwemer, now Morrowind, is generally accepted fact. Recorded history supports this, specifically mentioning the Rorik's clan refusal to join King Durmak in the first forming of the First Council and their subsequent exodus to Hammerfall. The architectural premise is also sound as the building habits of the dwarves adapted and changed, albeit slowly and in subtle ways over time and land. I propose that some of these differences are stylistic as well as practical. Traditional viewpoints suggest that the Vanderfell Dwemer were the most prolific of their kind, based on my excavations throughout Skyrim, Morrowind, and High Rock. I am not sure that this is the case. While Vanderfell is almost cluttered with dwarven ruins poking through the surface of the landscape, the construction of these ruins is fundamentally different from the majority of what I've observed elsewhere. Further, as we delve into Vanderfell's ruins, we notice that their internal structure is quite different. While major civic and operational chambers are found near the surface in a Vanderfell ruin, that is not typically the case on the mainland. Minor passageways and storehouse rooms are near the surface, and most important locations don't occur until we explore much deeper. Because such major locations are well hidden in Dwemer ruins outside of Morrowind, many scholars believe they were in fact not present in ruins outside that province. This premature conclusion led some to believe that such sites to be mere outposts. My research has shown that this is not the case. There are a few theories that may explain this difference. Perhaps clan architects simply had their own styles and preferences when it came to civic planning. This seems only somewhat likely, as dwarven techniques were based on empirical study. There was likely little room for creative interpretation when it came to building technique. Geological makeup of the terrain almost certainly played a role, especially in a region like northern Skyrim, where the ground near the surface is very rocky and often frozen, versus the volcanic substratum common in Vanderfall, or the ubiquitous aquifers found in Hammerfall. It's possible that dwarven architects in the north were not even able to excavate larger structures until reaching more pliable stratum. This scholar would like to suggest, however, that many structures west of Morrowind were built after First Era 420, when the clan Ruriken left Vanderfall. It seems evident that several clans broke off to create their own settlements, and chose to live in greater isolation than their eastern brethren. This theory is particularly fascinating because it leads me to believe that dwarven architects may have developed even more elaborate methods of hiding their strongholds over time. This opens the distinct possibility that undisturbed dwarven archaeological sites exist throughout Tamriel, even in southern areas like Cyrodiil or Black Marsh, where dwarves are not believed to have ever had significant presence. Though we ought not get carried away on flights of fancy, one could extrapolate this logic to suggest that some dwarven clans were living among us for much longer than we previously believed, perhaps well beyond the disappearance during the War of the Red Mountain in First Era 700. This person talks really quickly, that's why. I'm gonna lose my voice. I was gonna scream after this, but probably not now. Dwenmere Inquiries Volume 2, Their Architecture and Civilization by Thwel Gwynlyn Scholar. The limited written record supports their perception of the Deep Elves as culturally revering the pursuits of logic and science. This stands in stark contrast to the belief system of the most other Mare clans. When we imagine a society structured around such a central ideology, it seems reasonable that prolific scholars, especially in fields such as mathematics, metallurgy, or architecture, would be elevated to social status like that of clergy in a more mystically inclined culture. The idea is supported by a fragment of Dwemer's text recovered from a colony in Skyrim, Erkgunthund, which I believe to be associated with the clan Roriken. The original Dwemers of my translation follow: to raise, granted cousin, Kulik of privilege with duties for family home building, Hogan Kultora, tradition to father, Mundus shaper. Some scholars interpret this as evidence of Dwemer worship of Mundus, but I do not agree. My translation of this passage suggests that a respected Dwemer by the name Kulek was promoted to a civic position, probably tonal architect. The later half of this fragment suggests that Kulek's position requires him to build in a specific style. The term Hogan Kultura has thus far eluded me, but I believe it may be the name of such a style. It's possible that there were several styles, differing in their construction principles and typical structures. One earmark of what I believe was the prevalent Dwemer style among northern clans was a feature I call the deep venue. Deep venues are often characterized as being made up of more than one or more expansive natural caverns in which several other structures will occur. Structures within the venue may be carved from the stone itself or freely erected upon the cavern floor. The largest and most impressive venues, such as that found in Bethardum, may even further feature roads wide enough for 10 large men to walk shoulder-meet shoulder along it. Arcanics are typically smaller structures. Very few have been properly studied before disruption by grave robbers or greedy adventurers, but those few undisturbed sites have contained a surprising collection of magical objects such as soul gems, alchemic concoctions, and magical texts. Some scholars take these as evidence that the Dwemer did, in fact, dabble in the magical arts. Based on what we know of their culture, as well as the fact that most arcanics are minor structures compared to other common fixtures, I would suggest that these were centers of study, and nothing more. Perhaps the dwarves established these halls as a means to study men and mare, who surely seemed as alien to them as Dwemer seemed to us today. Great animacultries can be found in many dwarven strongholds. These were factories where the centurions and various other constructs were built. I have hoped to study these chambers for clues as to the means by which these mysterious automata are given life. But though some guardians make these especially difficult and dangerous areas to explore. Alright, next. Volume 3. My studies in this text have focused heavily on the fact that Dwemer archaeological sites west of Vanderfall seem to be built at much greater depths than their counterparts near the Red Mountain. I believe there was a specific threshold to which dwarven excavators would dig before the construction of vital structures would begin. I've referred to this threshold as the geocline, and I have found that to often be redundant within the deep venue of a colony. Still, there is some variation in the actual depth of a deep venue, whereas the geocline is always the marker where I reason the city proper begins. Tunnels and chambers at more shallow depths, while often grand in their architectural style, appear to have served little in the way of critical civic purposes. Surplus stores of food, whereas chambers that may have been used in trading with nearby surface settlements or barracks for topside patrols are common above the geocline. These tunnels, I have observed, can meander in a seemingly more random pattern than those planned structures beneath. I hypothesize that this may be due to the unpredictable nature of any excavation, even to a race as clever as the Dwemer. Surely, unexpected deposits of stone or geological events could make the effort difficult, and I think that these haphazard tunnels are often the result of the search for suitable stratum to build within. I have found in a small number of ruins references to a geological anomaly or place known as Brrr. This is intriguing because the term not only appears in a few tablet fragments, but very specifically on ornate metal frames in the deepest reaches of the stronghold Alftand, Erkengathand, and Mizinchaleft of Skyrim. I have yet to decipher the meaning of these elaborate carvings, but consider it highly strange that they occur in the deepest part of each of these ruins. Risen by order, cousins of privilege, cousins of privilege, Kolek of Schizensling, privileged duties, clan home buildings, Hogan Kultura, tradition to hailed world shaper. The most reasonable translation of blah, blah. Ah, that there's no quotation by the R beside risen, but there is one of the R beside shaper. But I have managed to decipher as blackest kingdom reaches, but I cannot imagine what that means. I suspect there may be some pattern I am failing to notice. This creeping doubt has haunted my career in recent years, and I have begun to doubt it will unravel some grand secrets of the dwarves in my lifetime, though it lies just beneath my nose, or indeed under my feet. Frontier Conquest and Accommodation, A Social History of Cyrodiil. University of Gwilyn Press, Third Era, 344. Historians often portray the human settlement of Tamriel as a straightforward process of military expansion of the Nords of Skyrim. In fact, human settlers occupied nearly every corner of Tamriel before Skyrim was even founded. These so-called Nedic peoples included the Proto-Cedilians, the Ancestrans of the Bretons, the Aboriginals of Hammerfall, and perhaps a now-vanished human population of Morrowind. Strictly speaking, the Nords are simply another of these Nedic peoples, the only ones that failed to find a method of peaceful accommodation with the elves who already occupied Tamriel. Veskremor was certainly not the first human settler in Tamriel. In fact, in fleeing civil war in Atmora, as the Song of Return states, Vesker was following a long tradition of migration from Atmora. Tamriel had served as a safety valve for Atmora for centuries before Veskremor's arrival. Malcontents, dissidents, rebels, landless younger sons all made the difficult crossing from Atmora to the New World. Of Tamriel. New archaeological excavations date the earliest human settlements in Hammerfall, High Rock, and Cyrodiil. I don't know what that symbol means. Era 800 to 1000, centuries earlier than Veskremor, even assuming that the 12 Nord kings prior to Hergul's were actual historical figures. These Nedic peoples were a minority in the land of elves, and had no choice but to live peacefully with the Elder race. In High Rock, Hammerfall, Cyrodiil, and possibly Morrowind, they did just that, and the Nedic peoples flourished and expanded over the last centuries of the Merithic era. Only in Skyrim did this accommodation break down, and events recorded in the Song of Return. Perhaps being close to reinforcements from Atmora, the Proto-Nords did not feel it necessary to submit to the authority of the Skyrim elves. Indeed, the early Nord chronicles note that under King Harald, the first historical Nord ruler, First Era 1113 to 221, the Atmoran mercenaries returned to their homelands, following the consolidation of Skyrim as a centralized kingdom. Whatever the case, the pattern was set. In Skyrim, expansion would proceed militarily, with human settlement following the frontier of conquest, and the line between human territory and elven territory was relatively clear. But beyond this zone of conflict, the other Nedic peoples continued to merge with their elven neighbors. When the Nord armies of the First Empire finally entered High Rock and Cyrodiil, they found Bretons and Proto-Cyrodiilians already living there among the elves. Indeed, the Nords found it difficult to distinguish between elf and Breton, the two races had already intermingled to such a degree. The arrival of the Nord armies upset the balance of power between the Nedic people and the elves, although the Nords' expansion into High Rock and Cyrodiil was relatively brief. Less than 2 centuries, the result was decisive. From then on, power in those regions shifted from the elves to the humans. Kolb and the Dragon, an adventure for Nord boys. Kolb was a brave Nord warrior. One day, his chief asked Kolb to slay an evil dragon that threatened their village. "Go through the mountain pass, Kolb," his chief said. "You will find the dragon on the other side." Kolb took his favorite axe and shield and walked to the pass, where he found a cold cave, a windy cave, and a narrow trail. Oh, it's choose your own adventure? Enter the windy cave. A strong gust of wind blew Kolb's torch out and knocked him into a pit where he split his head and died. Is there an easy way to turn pages? Enter the windy cave. Oh yeah, I just did that. 17. Spoilers. Spoilers. Kolb stepped into the frozen cave, but his gnawed blood kept him warm. A smelly tunnel climbed ahead of him, and wind howled from another to his left. A ladder was nearby as well. Well, the windy tunnel kills you. Let's go to the smelly tunnel. Following the stench, Kolb found a filthy orc. The orc snarled and charged Kolb with his spiked club. Ray shield. The orc cackled as his club splintered Kolb's shield and smashed into his face. There Kolb died, and the orc had soup from his bones. 13, swing axe. Before the orc could strike, Kolb swung his mighty axe. The orc's head and club fell uselessly to the floor. Oh. Kolb stepped into a rocky hill. He could see the dragon sleeping below, and a tavern off to the road nearby. Visit the tavern, obviously. Kolb stopped at the tavern to rest before fighting the dragon. High elves round the tavern, however, and poisoned his mead so they could steal his gold. And 16 is go down. Kolb found the lair where the dragon slept. Tendrils of smoke wafting from its nostrils. The air made Kolb's eyes sting, and he nearly slipped on the bones of men picked clean. The beast lay on its side, the throat and belly waiting targets. Hit the belly, because it's closer. Kolb crept towards the belly of the beast, but no sooner had he taken his eyes off the head of the beast than it snapped him up and ate him, whole, axe and all. And you go to 6. The head of the axe lodged itself in the tough, scaly neck of the beast. It wailed and thrashed, but Kolb held on and eventually sawed through the neck, killing the beast. Kolb returned home victorious, and his village was never bothered by the dragon again. Alright, so I think we didn't do 12, which is go to the winding trail. Climbing up, Kolb found a camp. He met a wise man who shared bread and showed 2 paths to the dragon's lair. One went through the hills and the other through the marsh. Let's go to the marsh first, because it's 5. Treading through the marsh, Kolb discovered a wailing ghost in his way. I guess give golds. Kolb remembered the story his Gran told him and tossed 2 gold chits for the ghost, and it faded away, allowing him to pass. Leaving the marsh behind, Kolb could see the dragon's lair nearby, as well as a small, welcoming tavern. And then you die if you go to the tavern. Yeah, we did that. So let's attack the ghost. Kolb swung his axe as hard as he could, but the ghost hardly seemed to notice. The ghost drifted into Kolb, and a deep sleep took him over, from which he never awoke. Did we miss something? We did that. We did that. We did that. We did that. We died to the ogre. Found the wise man. Did the belly. They killed us. Our grandma saved us from the ghost. I don't think we did that, but... Oh, I guess we did. Maybe I just don't remember. Okay, and that was the Choose Your Own Adventure for young Nord boys. Mixed Unit Tactics. In the 5 Years' War, Volume 1, by Codus Colonius. The legions could learn from the unconventional tactics used by the Khajiit in the 5 Years' War against Valenwood. I was stationed at the Sphinx-Mouth Legion Fort on the border near Dune, and witnessed many of the northern skirmishes firsthand. The war started with the so-called Slaughter of Torval. The Khajiit claimed that the Bosmer invaded the city without provocation and killed over 1,000 citizens before driven off by reinforcements from a nearby jungle tribe. The Bosmer claimed that the attack was... Sorry, I'm slipping into the other voice. Retaliated for Khajiit bandits who were attacking wood caverns headed for Valenwood. In the spring of Third Era 396, the war moved close to Fort Sphinxmouth. I was posted on lookout and saw parts of the conflict. I later spoke with both Khajiit and Bosmer who fought in the battle, and it will serve as an excellent example of how the Khajiit use a mixture of ground and tree units to win the war. The Khajiit began the fight in an unusual way by sending tree-cutting teams of Kathirath and the fearsome Sentinrath, or Battle Cats, into the outskirts of Valenwood's forest. When word reached the Bosmer that trees were being felled, allegedly a crime in the strange Bosmeri religion, a unit of archers were dispatched from larger conflicts in the south. The Bosmer were thus goaded into splitting their forces into smaller groups. The Bosmer archers took up positions in the remaining trees whose branches were now 20 or more feet apart, allowing some light into the forest floor. The Bosmer bent the remaining trees with their magic into small fortifications from which to fire their bows. When the tree cutters arrived the next morning, a half-dozen Khajiit fell to the Bosmer arrows in the first volley. After that, the Khajiit took large wooden shields from the backs of the Stentrach and made a crude shelter. The Khajiit, even the enormous Sentrath, were able to hide between this shelter and one of the larger trees. When it became apparent that the Khajiit would not leave their shelter, some Bosmer chose to descend and engage the Khajiit sword to claw. When the Bosmer were nearly upon the shelter, one of the Khajiit began playing on a native instrument of plucked metal bars. This was a signal of some kind, and a small group of the man-like Ohms and Ohmsrat emerged from covered holes on the forest floor. Although numbered, they were attacked from behind by surprise and won the ground quickly. The Bosmer archers in the trees would still have won the battle were they not having troubles of their own. A group of Dagi and Dagirach, two of the less common forms of Khajiit, who live in the trees of Tenmar Forest, jumped from one tree to another under a magical cover of silence. They took up positions in the higher branches that could not hold a Bosmer's weight. When the signal came, they used their claws and either torches or spells of fire. Accounts from the 2 survivors I spoke with vary on this point, to distract the archers while the battle on the ground took place. A few of the archers were able to flee, but most were killed. Apparently the Dagi and Dagirat have more magical ability than is widely believed if they were able to keep themselves magically silenced for so long. One of the surviving Bosmer told me that he saw a few ordinary cats among the Dagi and even claimed that these ordinary cats are known as Althik. They were the spellcasters. But Bosmer are almost as unreliable as the Khajiit when it comes to the truth, and I cannot believe that a house cat can cast spells. At the end of the day, the Khajiit lost perhaps a half-dozen fighters, out of a force of no more than 4 dozen, while the Bosmer lost nearly an entire company of archers. The survivors were unable to report back before a second company of archers arrived, and the strategy was repeated again, with similar results. Finally, a much larger force was sent, and the Bossmer won that battle with the help of the native animals of Valenwood. That third skirmish and the Khajiit response I will discuss in the second volume of this series. Which might not happen, because, yeah. Alright. Mysterious Akaviri. Mysterious Akavir. Akavir means Dragonland. Tamriel means Dawn Beauty. Atmora means Elderhood. Only the Red Guards know what the Fakuda ever meant. Akavir is the kingdom of the beasts. No men or mare live in Akavir, though men once did. These men, however, were eaten long ago by the vampiric serpent folk of Tessassi. Had they not been eaten, these men would have eventually migrated to Tamriel. The Nords left Atmora for Tamriel. Before them, the Elves had abandoned Aldamaris for Tamriel. The Red Guards destroyed Vakuda so they could make their journey. All men and mare know Tamriel is the nexus of creation, where the last war will happen, where the guards unmade Lorcan and left their adamantite tower of secrets. Who knows what the Akavari think of Tamriel, but ask yourself, why have they tried to invade it 3 times or more? There are 4 major nations of Akavari: Camril, Tessassi, Tangmo, and Ka-Dotan. When they are not busy trying to invade Tamriel, they are fighting with each other. Kamal is Snowhell. Demons live there, armies of them. Every summer they thaw out and invade Tangmo, but the brave monkey folk always drive them away. Once at Asum der Kamal, a king among demons, attempted to conquer Morrowind, but Al-Malaxia and the Underking destroyed him at Red Mountain. Tessassi is Snake Palace, once the strongest power in Akavir, before the Tiger Dragon came. The serpent folk ate all the men of Akavir a long time ago, but still kind of look like them. They are tall, beautiful, if frightening, covered in golden scales, and immortal. They enslaved the goblins of the surrounding isles to provide labor and fresh blood. The holdings of the Tessassi are widespread. When natives of Tamriel think of the Akavari, they think of the serpent folk, because one ruled the Cyrodiilic Emperor for 400 years in the previous era. He was a potentiate Versidue Cheyenne, assassinated by the Morag Tong. Tongmo was the Thousand Monkey Isles. There are many breeds of monkey folk, and they are all kind, brave, and simple, and many are also very crazy. They can raise armies when they must, for all of the other Akavari nations have, at one time or another, tried to enslave them. They cannot decide who they hate more, the snakes or the demons, but ask one and he will probably say snakes. Though once bitter enemies, the monkey folk are now allies with the tiger folk of Ka-Dotan. Ka-Dotan is the tiger dragon's empire. The cat folk here are ruled by the divine Toshraka, the tiger dragon. They are now a very great empire, stronger than Tessassi, though not at sea. After the serpent folk ate all the men, they tried to eat all the dragons. They managed to enslave the red dragons, but the black ones had fled to then Dotan. A great war was raged, which left both the cats and the snakes weak, and the dragons all dead. Since that time, the catfolk have tried to become the dragons. Toshraka is the first to succeed. He is the largest dragon in the world, orange and black, and he has many new ideas. First, Toshraka says, is that we kill all the vampire snakes. Then the Tiger Dragon Empire wants to invade Tamriel. I do not know what that book's about. I guess I gotta take a break.